And really the issue is being posed as there's a housing crisis, there's a housing crisis. And so I think it's really important for us to take a step back and understand what is the cause of that housing crisis and how do we make a plan for moving forward that isn't reactionary but is with a critical analysis of what led us into this and strategically and creatively and collaboratively thinking about our way out. And so everybody here tonight, I think, actually wants to go beyond complaining about the issue and actually take action. Am I right? All right. So thank you for caring and being here. And let's go ahead and get started. And this is actually a cake. Did you know that? That's a cake that was made by a local artist named Joni Eisen. And it was for the event that we put on in front of City Hall called the Cakewalk event. And the idea is that people are saying that this race with Ed Lee is a cakewalk for him. It's a re-election that is unopposed, and it is definitely contested. And so the idea was, if they're going to say it's a cakewalk, well, why don't we decorate cakes with the issues that voters want to debate? And we'll say, let Ed eat cake. And I asked Joni if she would create something based off of the survey data that I put out there. And I said, what are the issues that are most important to San Franciscans right now? And the number one issue, guess what it was? Housing. And in some form or another, preventing displacement, figuring out how to build more affordable housing. It was in some way related to housing. And so this is, I said to her, can we actually put something positive that we want to see happen? Can you make a cake that will inspire us about the vision of what's possible for development in SF? And so she came and made this, and it has St. Francis with his arms around this development that's being built with solar panels, with people of all ethnicities living in the city and helping to build it, and rooftop garden. So we have to be thinking about what is our yes for development. So San Francisco Chronicle says, you know, we're in a housing crisis. It's really bad. This is just July 13th, 2015. Business Insider, San Francisco is in a housing crisis, but we have no idea where to go from here. So this is something from last year, actually, and it says there's 22,000 new SF residents who are hunting for apartments that don't exist in San Francisco. And this is the evictions that have been happening. And if you can see, right around when Ed Lee became our mayor, what do you notice from compared where it is now? It's a steady increase from when he became mayor. So the guiding questions for this talk tonight. Question 1, is housing crisis the right term? I'm going to posit that maybe a better term is unsustainable growth, displacement, and inequitable prosperity after a global financial collapse. You think that's a little bit more descriptive than housing crisis, maybe more accurate? It is a mouthful. It is a mouthful. So we had this terrible economic global recession and meltdown that was caused by who? It was caused by banks, too big to fail banks. And this goes back to 1999. Glass-Steagall was repealed. And so you had investment banking and you had savings banking that got to be combined again. And there's this knowledge that this is going to lead us into trouble because these banks aren't going to be able to handle that power. They're going to do risky things that are going to actually topple not only our homeowners, but home builders. Do you see that? And markets in the U.S. economy. So question 2 that's guiding us, who are the winners and losers of the global financial collapse caused by the risky policy and fraudulent lending and investments from too big to fail banks? Who wins and who loses in San Francisco after the global financial collapse? And what policy is needed to equitably and sustainably raise all boats moving forward? Question 3, is inclusive, sustainable, culturally enriching development possible within the status quo of our current development and our current system? And if not, how do we get there strategically? So this tonight is an information session in part about Prop I and our support of Prop I for moving forward. And it's really saying, let's pause for a plan, because like we're saying, the trajectory that we're on is not going to get us to a place that's equitable and sustainable and inclusive. So we need to figure out a different plan. And that's what this event tonight is really about, is let's not just say no, let's find our yes, so that we can actually be excited about the future of development in San Francisco. Do you want to be excited about the future of development in San Francisco? Yeah. How do you feel right now? You feel a little despair, right? It's just like gulp. But we actually want to feel excited about the future. So my thesis is this: Mayor Lee's administration lacked proper analysis and foresight to ensure sustainable growth and equitable prosperity when creating economic and development policies after the global financial collapse. That's what we're dealing with right now. It's the policies, the economic policies and development policies of this administration. I would really posit that, and it's important that someone like me or Stuart or Francisco get to be in that position of leadership, working with the progressive community to get us on a different course to something that is exciting for our future. So let's go back to 2006 in SF, before the global economic collapse. Unemployment levels, guess what? They were super low before the collapse. If you look here, it was actually, unemployment is the red on the bottom, and it was actually at 3.6. That's what the unemployment level was in 2006 and 2007. It was around 3.6. Isn't that interesting? But then we have our global financial collapse, and look what happens. So we had this crisis that they were saying, jobs, jobs, jobs in San Francisco. And so Ed Lee was able to do a lot of the things that he was able to do under the guise of economic development. But look at where we are after the financial collapse. We're at the same place that we were before, but we're cheering on Ed Lee, saying he got us back here, but he's not doing the analysis of how to avoid these cycles again, because this whole system is rigged for boom and bust cycles. And so we really have to have a paradigm shift moving forward. So in 2010, before Ed Lee became mayor, SF had the largest amount of vacant units in the Bay Area. Did you know that? Did you know that? I actually worked for the census while I was at SF State, and I know these people were thorough because I was a middle manager, and I was almost scared at how thorough these people were, like hiding in the bushes and hanging out at muni stops and stuff, like trying to see, is there someone that lives in this apartment? So really thorough. They found 30,000 empty units. Isn't that incredible? And so we didn't have an unemployment crisis, and we didn't have a housing crisis before the global economic collapse. That's what I wanted to point out there. So 30,000 empty homes. In 2010, displacement through eviction were lower than they were in 2007. So we didn't have a displacement crisis either. So I just want to show you that we're being told to look at the wrong cause of our issues right now. We're being told that it's because people held back on building homes. And I'm telling you that it's actually something much more structured and planned around global finance and investment and development. And this is not new to San Francisco. This happened in the 50s and 60s when this large-scale planning happened. And so we need to really learn from history, and then we need to take the reins and actually point ourselves in a different direction through people-powered democracy. Yes? Yes? Okay. All right. All right. Well, that didn't sound convincing. People-powered democracy. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so in 2007 to 2011, development of new housing slowed down to a trickle. Why? Because all of a sudden no one had any money. So at that point, there was no real demand for housing. So that was a boo-hoo for developers. And before the global financial collapse, there wasn't as much of a demand. So they weren't going to get as big of a return on investment. And so developers don't want to build unless they're getting this insanely high return on investment. Jackpot style ROI is what I call it. So Lennar is this group that got a contract to build about 10,000 units. But what happened is that the 2008 financial collapse, they said they had the financing, and then all of a sudden they said it didn't exist anymore. And so that stopped development because nobody would invest. And Ed Lee went to China to try to get $1 billion for this investment. And they're courting these too big to fail banks that cause the issue, who only want the money if they have a certain kind of return. So do you see who's pulling the strings here? I just want to make that clear, that we're looking at the wrong place when we're saying it's progressives that are holding us back because we don't want to let the free market reign. Because the free market, when left to its own devices, and what it's done here, devastates in order to achieve maximum profit. So don't believe the hype. This is about how, it was when the global financial collapse happened that the city stepped up and the nonprofits in San Francisco stepped up and kept building affordable housing. So 3 cheers for the city. It wasn't the investors that were developing during the global financial collapse. It was the city, and it was nonprofit developers. So thank you, city, and thank you, nonprofit developers. Okay, here's our collapse. Who gets to benefit from that? So JP Morgan, they pay $13 billion. They're in the clear. JP Morgan is the group, there's a subsidiary, a boutique investment group of, how cute, a boutique investment group of Chase Bank that lent this guy Podell the money so that he could go all around this 2000 block of Bryant Street and, like a monopoly board, literally, go and try to buy up every property that he can. And that's where sell space is, and that's where there's PDR space. That's important for the community. Maybe there could be some improvements there, yeah, but not some guy who's going around funded by Chase Bank to tear it down to build up this. Yeah. And he does development in another part of town, and it actually looks really nice. I think he did something in Nob Hill or something, and it's a really nice design there. But we have the Cultural Action Network, and we have activists in San Francisco taking a stand in the mission, joining up and saying no. And so this project is permanently on hold right now. They've done some damage for sure, but it's the activism that has kept it. So how does this tie in with Ed Lee and his policies? So number one, what got me started in local activism is actually Ed Lee's Office of Economic and Workforce Development allowed a Chase Bank to move in, working with the planning department without a conditional use hearing from neighbors, and it displaced 3 local businesses, were collapsed into one to make this mega chase. And that's what got me started, because I thought, Matt Gonzalez in 2004 started formula retail law, and so we're supposed to be able to have a say as neighbors if a chain moves into our neighborhood. And they were doing some really interesting gymnastics, and I call it breaking the law, at the planning department and the Board of Appeals to not allow us this hearing to say whether this Chase Bank was necessary or desirable. And this is a working class neighborhood, and do you know what Chase does after they move into my neighborhood, my working class neighborhood? They say, we're going to start catering to people who make over $100,000 a year. Yeah. And they also move in because of the same no conditional use hearing. There were groups of people in Valencia that saw what we did in Divisadero, and they said, Amy, can we stop this Chase Bank that wants to move in at Valencia? And I said, you can fight the same fight we did, but they're continuing to break the law. And so jobs, jobs, jobs was the call that led Mayor Lee to run for mayor, and that was his rally cry, was jobs, jobs, jobs. So one of the things that he decided to do was, the Twitter tax break was one, but then there was also, he proposed sweeping changes to the tax system. And let's be fair, there were some progressive people who also wanted to change the city's it was a payroll tax, and they wanted to shift it to a gross receipts tax. But that also did away with the IPO tax that you had in San Francisco. And so they did away with an IPO tax, which made it so that gave the green light for businesses who were funded by venture capitalists who were not public yet to come to San Francisco. So you get all these companies that are coming here because Ron Conway worked with Ed Lee to change the tax code. And Conway is there with Lee. He says the tech industry has a lot to do with the housing issue. This is his admission, right? Since 2011, 101,000 tech jobs have been created, And to my knowledge, it's 100,000 jobs or so in all areas in San Francisco that got added since 2010. So I think he's actually incorrect here from what I saw in a Chronicle article, but I'm not totally sure. I'd like to see some data on that. But he's saying that we're going to take credit for the unemployment rate being what it is, not mentioning the global financial collapse, anything like that. Then you guys might have seen this. There's this article recently about, it was showing that the places where the most VC investment, the venture capitalists are putting in the money, that's where all the rents are going up in San Francisco, in San Jose, and Boston, and New York. So all the places where these billions of dollars have been invested, and San Francisco has the most, the Bay Area has the most invested in us, including Airbnb, Uber, and so forth. And then Airbnb, remember we had those 30,000 empty units? Well, I'm sure we have less today, and part of that is that people are renting out on Airbnb illegally, and that's taking things off of our housing stock. So what I say is Prop F plus Airbnb equals Fairbnb. So let's go ahead and make sure that we support Prop F, because I was part of that whole process at the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and Ed Lee and a lot of other supervisors are allowing this company to come and take things off of the market that they're not being regulated at all. They're doing this illegally right now. So thousands of units are being rented illegally right now through Airbnb. SF becomes a bedroom community for the growing tech industry. We get a lot of pushback against the Google buses, and this says pay your fair share, Google bus. And the idea is that it's not a crime to commute, so let's remember that. But what's going on right now is unsustainable, because it was after the global financial collapse. You get a lot of investment and growth in these tech companies that are growing without having to do a nexus, a connection between the industry growth and housing growth and transit growth. So they're growing at a rate that exceeds the ability of our ecosystem to sustain it. And we're feeling the hemorrhaging, are we not? So what do? Do you sue the suburbs? That's what actually the Bay Area Renters Federation, SF-BARF, I disagree with them on a lot of their analysis, but this is one place we align big time, is they want to sue the suburbs. And the reason is because Mountain View is building industry like you wouldn't believe, but they're blocking the investment in new housing development. And Google Housing Axed in Cities General Plan, this is from 2012. But what about office space in San Francisco? We have Prop M here. And so what that does is put limits on the amount of office space that you can grow in the city. Every year it gets upped by, I think it's almost 1 million square feet or something like that. 875,000 square feet of new office space can be added. But that puts a limit on how much office space that can be created. Mountain View doesn't have that limit, and so they're running away with it, and they're not feeling compelled to build any housing. And this is from this year. It says the law in play again as tech's hunger for offices grow. This is from last year, and it's showing that there's so much square footage that's at the planning department right now that wants to be built of office space, but that's on the right is how much they're allowed to build because of. So if we didn't have that in place, it would be a runaway development of office space without building for housing, which is totally unsustainable. This guy is a hero. His name's Lenny, and he is on the Mountain View City Council now, and he's the only guy on there. I met him at the Bay Area Prosperity Plan conference, and he is the only guy on the City Council now who's saying, this isn't sustainable, guys. We need to actually build housing, too. So I went to this conference back in April, and it was put on by the Associated Bay Area Governments and MTC, the Metropolitan Transit Commission, I think is what they're called. And they had this one slide that shows this axis down here is saying that's how many more units you need of housing for the amount of low-income workers that you have, and that's San Jose there. And these are all Bay Area cities. So there's more low-income workers than there are housing available for them. So what happens if City Hall caters to the status quo of investment, development, and real estate interests? What if we keep going along this way? This is what happens every so often, every 7 years or so. the Associated Bay Area Governments puts out a report, and they call it the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. And they tell you per city how much affordable housing, how much above like 120,000 or more. They tell you all the median levels that you have to reach. And what you'll see here, you might not be able to see this, but we are at 211% of what we were supposed to do of luxury housing, market rate housing. And we are at 56% of low income and 27% of moderate income. So we are knocking it out of the park with our current approach to building market rate and luxury, but we're actually not getting anywhere close to what we need to get to. Market rate housing is said to make the crisis work. This is from 48 Hills, worse, because for every 100 new high-end housing units, the idea from this report that was done in 2007 is you need to build between 20 and 43 new affordable units just to make up for the needs that are created by a high-end housing unit. So you have to be keeping up with this balance at least that much, which is 20 to 43 affordable per 100 new. There's a housing balance report that just happened. The report shows that San Francisco added 6,559 affordable units between this 10-year period, the last 10 years, but we lost almost just as much through the eviction process. So that's where we're at right now. Like I said, with these new jobs that are being invested in, we have all of these people that are coming here because they've been hired already, and then they're frantically looking for a place to live. So this industry is growing without realizing that you need more housing to be able to sustain it. And then we get all of this displacement that's going on. How does Ed Lee respond? He waters down Jane Kim's idea in her district to do 33% mandatory affordable housing, and he just says, let's make it a policy idea. But we could have actually done this, and it would have worked. And now he's considering vetoing the Tenant Protections 2.0. I talked to him twice in this campaign cycle, and both times I asked him, do you support eviction protections? And both times he dodged the question and said he was waiting to hear from lawyers or he didn't know where it was at. So he's not only not leading the way, now he might actually block it. So what's the plan for developing the mission? Well, this Eastern Neighborhoods Plan, do people know about that? The Eastern Neighborhoods Plan of 2008, somewhat? The two main things from that plan are we have to stabilize our light manufacturing in San Francisco's Mission District and Eastern neighborhoods, and we have to provide new housing to low, moderate, and middle income families. So those are the two main goals. Are we doing that in the mission? No. So we're not following the plan, so we need to stop, right? Like, we're not following the plan, so we need to stop because Ed Lee's not making sure that we're following the plan. Easy as that. That's why we need Prop I. What's actually happening in the mission in regards to development? This is over the last 12 years or so, from 2001 to 2013. Like I said, look at half of the development that was done was from the city, and it was for 100% affordable, and half of it was market rate units. And within those market rate units, there were 97 affordable, which only ends up being about under 15%. So we're not reaching those targets that we need to. We have people that were fighting against this conversion of artist studio space into office tech space because it's not following the plan. They're breaking the law. So people are saying no monster in the mission. They're saying they don't like the height, and they don't like the style, and they don't like that it's unaffordable. And so that means the onus is on us, Mission and San Francisco, to say what we do like. I find that very important. We really have to start talking about what we want right now, because that's how we could get Prop I passed, is if everyone says, we actually know what we want, but we need this pause so that we can get it. And we're excited about the future of development. So we don't want that. Prop I Heart SF is saying basically that you can't destroy PDR space, and it has to be 100% affordable. That means up to 120% AMI, which means about 85,000 for one person and about 100,000 for 4 people. So that's how that breaks down. That's what they call affordable, up to that range. And doesn't that sound exactly like what the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan is? So basically, we pass the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan, and then we have to pass a separate piece of legislation that says, hey guys, remember you have to follow the Eastern Neighborhoods Plan? Do you feel that? Is that what's happening? Does anybody else see it happening different? So, yes, in my backyard, what do we want to see? What do you think of this? Kind of ick? This is it in the daytime from another angle. What if I told you that this is in San Francisco, it was where a parking lot was, and it's all affordable housing? Does that make it look a little better? Does that make it look a little better? Interesting. What about this middle one right here and this middle one over there? What do you think about that? Is that okay? Is that kind of cool with that? It looks okay. It's not exciting, right? But what if I tell you that it's 231 housing units in a group occupancy format? It's a new style of people co-living, like sharing a space, but it's not like your old SRO. It's like a new approach. Like I live in a co-op with 7 other people, believe it or not. And so I'm used to that kind of communal style, and I actually like it. And there are other people that like it too, and they want their own private space, but they want to have shared communal spaces with other people. So what's interesting is that this is 50% less of construction and a lot less time in order to build. Do you know why? Any guesses? Yeah. So this company is called Forge, but I'll get into that a little bit later. This is another affordable housing, all affordable housing, not in San Francisco, but looks okay. This is another one. Looks okay. This is this guy, Kevin Danaher, who started Global Exchange, co-founder. He came up with this idea for a place in the Mission. So like, we need to be thinking about what's the development style we want that's actually affordable and can be made in a pro-worker way. So model housing in San Francisco. Guess what? We have a lot of the same style of housing all throughout San Francisco. People love it. You know why? Because there are these little flourishes and these differences in each one. What I'm proposing is that we can do things like that, these external elements to some of these more drab building exteriors. Don't let it get you stopped that, these prefab or these ones that are more boxy are maybe not the best design choice, you might think. Like, this is just paint on a building in the Mission. It's SoMa. It's Mission and 10th, but it's cool, right? It's local designers that painted this, and we could be doing this throughout San Francisco, creating jobs. Investment strategies. AFL-CIO is a union. They use their pension fund to invest in 4 different developments in San Francisco over the last few years. They were doing it for job creation, but I have a much better idea how they could get more bang for their buck in terms of investing. So this is one of the properties they invested in, and it was a $58 million loan that they gave. It was an $82 million project altogether. So when you think about how to make that 100% affordable, let's say $82 million for 162 units at 100% affordable. 80 units could be rented for an average income of $50,000. So that could, more or less, I'm just saying that's the average for 80 of those units. 42 units, and that could be for 1 or 2 people. 42 units for $100K. A third of that income is $30,000K they'd be paying a year. And then you have 40 units that make $150K up to that point per year. If you had that, then you'd actually be able to pay off that entire loan and investment in 19 years. And then you'd just be making pure profit off of that. So I just want to put that out there, that when we're talking about like long-term investments, if we had people who would be willing to invest and say, I want a 10% return or 15% return over 20 years, people who are just, getting into investing right now. And I'm going to help build my city by being able to invest in this way. Pension funds can be using their money to invest in these things and make these houses affordable. The investment opportunity is there. This woman I met at that conference I was telling you about, and she talks about all these different tools. You can't really see them behind her, but there's about 14 or 15 different types of tax benefits if you're building affordable and if you're building sustainable. So those are also things we can dive into. This is an amazing opportunity, fundrise.com. You can see here they're building from the ground up in Salt Lake City. You can get a 14% return on investment that will come back to you in 3 years. We have the ability to build our city. We have the ability in San Francisco. There's so much wealth here that we can actually get people to have some civic pride and invest in building our city. And we won't have to rely on China, and we won't have to rely on Chase Bank or these developers that don't give a shit about us. We can actually build our own city. Isn't that exciting? With the workers, and with the workers, basically, because whoever's, and people who want to invest in something positive. So pro-worker, faster building strategies, like I was telling you about, that building, there's a company called Forge. Right now, in the San Francisco Bay Area, there is not one prefab manufacturing plant. We have to change that. As mayor, I will change that. As a regional thinker, I will change that, because we don't need a manufacturing plant in San Francisco because we don't have the space for it. But guess who has it? Fremont, Hayward, Oakland. So there is space to be able to do this. It's not here, but if we had 3 different centers that were doing prefab throughout the region right now, they're going to do this one in Sacramento. It's the first of its kind. But I've been paying attention to this for the last year. If I was your mayor for the last year, you would have seen a lot of changes a lot quicker than this guy that we have right now. So 9-story eco-friendly Melbourne apartment building goes up in 5 days with this technology. So it cuts down on the construction time, but Forge, let me remind you, is a union operation. They're all union. It's going to be a shift for some of, we're not going to switch all to this kind of style, but it's going to be part of what we do. And so there'll still be jobs for people locally who are carpenters and plumbers and doing things the old-fashioned way, but this is a part of the piece. So my idea is, why don't we actually pick 5 to 10, like per neighborhoods, like different districts, say, we like these 5 to 10 styles. If you do this, we're going to speed up the entitlement process and the construction process because we've already agreed we like it, and there's going to be a certain amount of affordable housing within it. And this is one that has a vertical garden in it. That's a prefab. So we need pro-worker, faster building and investment strategies through city policy that benefit both small property owners and local workforce. Amen? Yeah. Okay, so one of the things here, additional dwelling units. Right now they are allowed in District 8 and District 3, Christensen and Wiener's district. We need to make them available in every district, because there are 37,000 parcels within the city that have already been identified that could have 1 or more additional dwelling units. Here's how we make it for the workers. Here's how we make it for our people. What we do is the city creates a program. Ed Lee could do this too. Steal this idea, Ed Lee. You can create a system where it's our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our healthcare workers, our artists. We have a list of people that it's a platform style that's similar to an Airbnb style, which copied from couchsurfing.com. Let's not forget. It's being able to build up a confidence in the people who want to rent and saying they're part of this workforce, and we're going to help. If any property owner wants to build an additional dwelling unit, which estimated at $50,000 to $150,000 to build a new unit, we, the city, will help you finance that if you agree to rent to one of these people in this platform registry for 30% of their income. And you can take pride, in developing a house for one of your neighbors in need. Sustainable design models. Whoa, hello, look at this. This is in Dallas. They did a project for Show Me Some Sustainable Design. This is what they came up with, this hilltop structure. It's called like Forward Dallas or something. It was Forwarding Dallas. And they said that they started in 2011. I couldn't find any accompanying documentation of it actually built, but this is what won the prize. Here's something in San Diego that got a design idea that has enough vertical agriculture to support 10% of San Diego's produce needs. Whoa, right? That's a huge building, but I mean, no. This is a design. This is also from that Dallas program. It's a canyon design, and it has 1,000 people living there. This is what it looks like inside. And I was thinking of something not necessarily like this, because some people say that looks kind of ugly on the outside. Some people like it. It doesn't have to be just like this, but 1,000 people could live there. Have you seen Balboa Reservoir, which is city-owned land? We're supposed to be able to build there. Something like this that ties in the agriculture piece to CCSF's program and bolsters their soil stewardship and regenerative agriculture understanding and programs, creates jobs for former CCSF students. So something like this could be built there, and it could really benefit CCSF and the whole community. Here's another style. These are luxury apartments. And this is something they did in Wyoming, and it's vertical agriculture, and it's in Wyoming, so it gets cold there. And the city built it. They had a vacant lot, and they built this to be able to produce produce like year-round. So it's very exciting. We could be doing this in San Francisco, right? We could actually require this. It's exciting. It's exciting times. This is, something that Kevin Danaher, like I said, wanted to do where the Navigation Center is now. They're going to develop that for affordable housing. So investing in rent-controlled units for low to moderate income tenants. San Francisco Community Land Trust, all right. They're wonderful. This was in their first building that they got in 2007 that they were able to purchase in perpetuity for low to mid-income tenants. And this is Pigeon Palace, so this is a recent victory, which is really exciting. And then first right of refusal legislation. If I'm mayor, if Stewart's mayor, I would imagine he'd be interested in this too, to actually, Washington, D.C. does this, where if your house is up for sale, the first offer that's made, the people that live there currently have the ability to match that. And what's really important about that is that's what helps with community land trusts to be able to purchase, because there's a built-in mechanism to support that. No one's picked that up, and Ed Lee wouldn't touch it with the 10-foot pole. So why doesn't Ed Lee support right of first refusal? That's the question, right? But this is from a recent talk he gave. It was a couple weeks ago, and he said, Ed Lee sees more and more links between downtown development and affordable housing. Ed Lee sees those links. He has special glasses. He sees more and more links between a market rate developer and their support for the development of affordable housing. Do you see those links? He has such special glasses. Ed Lee is excited to see so much change going on, and so much of it positive. So, special glasses once again. And with so many more residents able to share in that very prosperity. Do you feel that people are able to share in the prosperity right now? I don't feel that. That's why I'm running for mayor. He closed by calling for the creation of the most inclusive city this planet has ever imagined. We in this room can make this the most inclusive, sustainable city that this planet has ever imagined. We can do that if we become mayor. If we become mayor, we can do that. If Ed Lee becomes mayor, it's maybe, who knows, there are miracles. Maybe we find his soft spot and we say, we got these ideas you can take from us. I don't care how the ideas happen, but I want to be a conduit for change. Do you want to be a conduit for change? We can do that, because we have an election going on in one of the most amazing cities in the world, which is San Francisco. You wouldn't know it by what's going on right now. You wouldn't know that there's a mayor's race going on, but that's why we can sneak in there and take this from them. What will 4 more years of Ed Lee and the status quo bring us? Doom? Evictions? So we need political will at City Hall. Can we all say this together? 1, 2, 3. We need political will at City Hall to ensure that we put the needs of our neighbors, community-serving businesses and orgs, and planet above excessive profits for developers, realtors, and investors. That's what we need. We need that political will. And here are 3 people who are working to make that happen. Vote 1, 2, 3 to replace Ed Lee. Vote 1, 2, 3 to replace Ed Lee. Vote 1, 2, 3 to replace Ed Lee.